Quazi here. Scientists have already discovered the key to creating your own reality. In fact, you've been using this discovery since the day you were born. Let me introduce you to Thomas Young. He was a British scientist and inventor who was born in 1773. He's the reason we were able to decrypt ancient Egyptian hieroglyphics, which then allowed people to translate ancient Egyptian languages. One area of Young's research that I want to address today was his work on something called the double slit experiment. Scientists set up a barrier with two parallel slits in it. They shot light at the barrier so it would pass through the two slits, and behind the barrier was a screen to capture the light pattern. Now here's the crazy part. When scientists observed and measured the light as it passed through the slits, the light pattern on the screen changed. It went from an interference pattern to a simple distribution. Somehow, the very act of measuring and watching the light affected how it behaved. The light particles acted differently when under scrutiny and observation. This groundbreaking experiment revealed that at a quantum level, the observer actually influences the outcome that is observed, and the consciousness of the person conducting the test directly impacts the results that we see. Meaning, the double slit experiment opened up a radical new understanding of how reality works. Our minds are not just simply passive observers, but we actively participate in shaping the world around us. Your consciousness is somehow manipulating the reality that you're experiencing. Now, I know this sounds almost impossible, but when you think about it, it's actually not that surprising. Take the self-fulfilling prophecy, for example. If you believe you're going to fail at something, that belief increases the odds that you actually will. It's a negative cycle that feeds on itself. But the opposite is also true. If you believe that you will succeed, that positive outlook boosts your chances of actually making it happen. Basically, you get what you focus on, and your assumptions and mindset literally shape your reality. So after doing some thorough research on the double slit experiment, one question burned in my mind. How can you harness these findings to consciously create your own reality? Well, here's what I've discovered. The key is becoming conscious observers of our own thoughts, self-image, and beliefs. Because when you start to pay attention to what you're thinking and feeling, you can begin to change your patterns of thought and create a new reality for yourself. And when you do this correctly, you'll be able to create a life where you wake up every single morning feeling excited about the day ahead. Know that you're capable of achieving anything that you set your mind to, and live a life filled with joy, abundance, and success. But most importantly, you become a conscious creator of your own reality. In today's video, I'm going to show you everything from how I went from a totally lost 21-year-old about to sell my soul to a corporate job to a successful 7-figure entrepreneur living my dream life in just a few years by applying these exact principles. And I'm going to show you how you can do it for yourself with actual actionable tools. So without further delay, let's get started. So now let's get to understanding how our attention actually dictates the version of reality that gets manifested. In order to understand that, we have to understand how energy flows. Anytime you're feeling stuck in your life, you feel like you've been working towards something and it just hasn't been happening, or similar situations keep arising, same revenue roller coaster, same relationships you keep attracting, what you have to understand is somewhere there is stuck energy, okay? If energy cannot flow, which is what needs to happen with energy, it gets stagnant. And when it gets stagnant, we experience the same circumstance. But what directs the flow of energy? Attention. Wherever attention goes, energy flows. Our focus and our attention determines where energy flows. What most people don't know is that the nature of our attention, there are two main types of attention that we possess. There is what's called polar attention and non-polar attention. Polar attention has the power to attract and repel reality. Let's get rid of the repel part and focus solely on the attract part, because they're one and the same. Okay, any problem flipped to its side becomes the solution. Two different sides of the same coin. If I'm attracting something, I'm repelling something else. That's what polar attention does. Non-polar attention is completely neutral. It has the power to dissolve reality. Now, in terms of quantum events manifesting into our lives, let's look at, with a diagram, what this could mean. If we have two types of polar attentions, the positive attention and the negative attention. When we think positively about something, life doesn't care about the real nature of our attention. It cares about the content. If I hate bills and I hate losing money, I'm going to get more of the event of losing money and bills. If I love making money and I love growing, then I will get more of the thing that I love, growing and making more money. Okay? For us, human beings, how we've been conditioned is throughout our whole lives, we've lived in a fear and survival mode because that's become our biology. All around us, we've been conditioned to, first and foremost, survive. What's the most important or most powerful way to survive? Eliminate and avoid any threat to your survival. Okay, so we've been conditioned to live in this protection mode, this avoid conflict, avoid taking risks. A lot of us have been conditioned this way. And because of that, we keep experiencing more and more of the thing that we're worried about. So just think about what you see on the news, think about what you read on social media, and think about why there's more fear-mongering than anything else going on. That's what others can hook onto, the pendulums, all of the societal conditioning around us. That's how they can manipulate us and influence us, when they can hook onto our fears. In fear, anger, and pride, we can be moved into action the most effectively. Please take a moment to reflect on that. There's so many prideful people who are ready to go to war to protect the thing that they love, and they're so proud of it, right? While that's great, it makes them blind to what's really going on. And it's very, very easy to get someone to do a certain desired type of action when they're angry. And it's very easy to make someone do a certain kind of action when they're fearful. So fear, anger, and pride is what society keeps us stuck in, keeps our attention focused on, which makes us do things that we don't necessarily want to do. So for most people, they keep experiencing the same relationships over and over because they keep holding on to this trauma from the past. Their attention is more focused on avoiding the kind of relationships they've had, which is why they keep attracting that same kind of relationship, the same kind of partner. Most people get traumatized by an event and they're afraid. They haven't processed that event properly, which is where neutral attention or non-polar attention comes in. We're going to talk about this in a second. But for now, you have to understand there's two different types of attention, positive and negative. Life only cares about the content of our attention, what we're giving more attention to. If we have a reality in which this is our current situation, and we're presented with a juncture in our life path. Let's say it's a important business decision that you have to make, or a challenge comes up in your business regarding an employee or whatever it may be. If we choose to positively perceive it and the content of our positive attention is, hey, somehow this will help me grow, then the lifeline will shift to a more positive lifeline. More of that thing that you feel positively about will manifest. On the other hand, if we feel negatively about it and we think, oh no, this is something that's bad, well, that bad thing will happen. So you see what's happening here? We feel positively and our mind perceives the content to be positive. We feel negatively and our mind perceives a content to be negative. Let's say something unfortunate happens to you. Let's say you get a bill or you get like a very big tax bill. Immediately you're like, oh, this is bad. If this happened, that means something worse or terrible will happen. How do you know that? You're just assuming that because you've become fearful. It's make you become fearful. When we have a feeling, we try to justify the presence of that feeling by thinking about other things that potentially could make this fear stronger. Why do we do that? We're feeling creatures. When we feel something, we feel alive, therefore we survive. That is our biological conditioning. When we are in a state of fearfulness, we start to spew up all of these things that could potentially happen. Oh no, now that could go wrong and something else could go wrong. Oh no, what if this big tax bill means I can't pay my business expenses and I can't pay my rent or I can't pay like my employees? What if all of these things happen? That's when you go into a spiral because now this negative attention starts to influence the content of your attention. I hope this is making sense. If you have any questions, just let me know below. The key thing is it has to have a correspondence of heart and mind. When you feel negatively in your heart, the mind immediately spews up negative things, which then makes it manifest, which makes you shift into a corresponding lifeline where more of that negative thing will happen. But here's what's crucial. This is non-polar neutral attention. If we perceive something that's happened to us with non-polar and neutral attention, it simply comes into our lives and passes. It has no power over us. So let's say in this unfortunate circumstance where you got hit with a big tax bill, you simply looked at it and you accepted it and you had neither positive nor negative about it. You would still continue on that same life path that you were before. Nothing would really change. It would dissolve itself. For most people, they resist their past traumas and their fears by attributing negative attention to it. Think about how this happens. Whenever something has happened to us in the past that we don't like, we try to run away from it because the feelings are too strong and we don't know how to handle it. So when we run away, what are we essentially doing? We're resisting it. Whatever you resist persists. You give it force, it has a counter force back onto you. So we spend our whole lives resisting all of the things that have happened in the past that we don't like. And we live from that place of trauma. And because of that, situations that affirm that trauma keep coming up. So an example that I can give you was, for me, was bullying. For my whole life, I used to tell myself, oh, I'm this way because I got bullied. I'm justifying my shortcomings because I was bullied as a kid. But then I realized what was happening and I flipped the script. And I said, you know what? Maybe this bullying was good for me. Immediately shifted positive lifelines. I started to go to the gym and work out. Oh, I have all of this grit and determination to be better and improve myself because I got bullied. Now my story's become, I've become successful at making these videos, being on camera, because when I was a kid, I got bullied for making YouTube videos playing the guitar, because that's what happened. And when I tell myself this story, and I really truly believe it, because there's always two different sides to the coin. Always up to you. It's your choice on how you perceive it. This is 100% in your control. How you choose to perceive something is 100% your responsibility. What happens after may not be. But if you can choose your attention, I can tell you what happens after is going to correspond with that attention. Now that you hopefully understand this, let's talk about how to use this to effectively create reality. I'm going to give you another concrete example to help you fully understand how I've used this in my personal life and why this is actually one of the most powerful things you can do. When I got started in this journey, my dream was to quit my 9-to-5, my full-time job, and get into a business and become an entrepreneur because I wanted time and financial freedom. Okay, that was my main thing. I worked at a summer internship in engineering. It was to go into this corporate career. Every time I went in there, I literally saw people wanting to kill themselves. Like they wanted to stick their arms in the machines to get workers' comp so they didn't have to work there anymore. And that environment was so horrible. It was like a factory. And there were a lot of machines and it was really dark and you had to wake up at 4 a.m. to get to work by 6. It was quite far away from me and I was like, I can't spend the next 40 years of my life doing this. This is no way to live. This is worse than prison. Okay, maybe not worse than prison, but it's kind of like prison. I then set a goal that, hey, I would by January 1st or like by May 2019, I had to make a certain amount. Told myself I want to make 5K a month because that's the income that I was getting from my internship. They offered me a full-time role after I graduate at 5K a month. And I told my parents, hey, if I can make 5K a month by myself after I graduate college, you can't give me shit for pursuing my own path. And brown parents are like, you know, they're in the struggle mentality, the work hard, the 9-to-5 mentality. So they were like, oh, like you're gonna do that. What, by fucking making YouTube videos online on your computer? No, you have to fight and struggle to earn your place under the sun. I took it as a challenge and I started on this journey. And in January, I went all in. January of 2019, I went all in. And you can look back at my YouTube videos. And when I tried to go all in, at first there was some momentum and I remember signing my first client and my first coaching client. You know, 1 month I did 3K, which is getting pretty close. But then May of 2019 came by. And up until then, I was in this struggle mindset. I was always in this fear. My attention was always sucked in by the fear of failing and the fear of not, you know, performing and proving to my parents that I could do it. And by then, by May, I'd already made the decision that I wasn't going to go into the job. And I told my parents that. I'm like, and you know what? I'm doing okay, and I can promise you by May I can make my first 5K month, and then you can't give me shit. That's what I did. I formally quit the job. I released that safety net from under me. The month of May came around, and I realized, I was really struggling and fighting. But that's when the pressure was at an all-time high. I wanted to avoid failure like hell. Okay, and I remember just being so much pressure, and every time I talked to a prospective client, I was just so desperate and needy for the sale. That month, I literally got no clients, and I made absolute zero, and that's never happened before prior to that. And that's when it really hit me. Like I went into like a completely deep spiraling pit, and I just completely said fuck it, and I had a dark night of the soul almost. But that's when I realized my attention up until then was 100% on avoiding failure. I was resisting failure so much. I was so afraid to fail. Every single resource I had within me, internal resource, my energy, my attention, my time, was on avoiding failure and resisting that anxiety that I had within me. But that month, when I actually failed and my worst nightmare had come to life, it all dropped. This is it. Like I failed. I'm done. What's next? Well, from this place, I can just keep on trying because I quit the job anyways. I just kept going, but this time my attention was no longer so absorbed, so sucked away by all of the fears and anxieties and the failure that I was trying to avoid. Now I had more attention available to focus on what I wanted, which is to get to that 5K month. Literally June of 2019, I had my first ever 8K month. I made my first ever $8,000 in 1 month in June. In July, I made my first 12K month. In August, by August of 2019, I made my first 20K month. And I shit you not, the year prior, I made a goal when I started that by July of 2019, I would make my first 20K month. Even though I would have been completely happy with 5K a month, I just said, you know what, why don't we just set that goal anyways? And then by January of 2020, around 6 months later, I had my first $100,000 month. Okay, so that goes to show what happens when you let go of resisting failure so much and just shift your attention to what you want instead. When I focused on what I wanted to move away from, I moved towards that. When I focused on what I wanted to move towards, I moved towards that. Life doesn't differentiate. Positive and negative attention are polar. They have attractive qualities. They just attract realities. Okay, you have to remember that. Most people are more afraid of failing than they love to succeed. They're more afraid to lose money than they love making money. Shift your attention towards what is wanted instead. Now, I know this is very, very easy to say, so I'm going to share with you a concrete method in which you can do this. This method is called accept and redirect, a combination of both utilizing polar and non-polar attention. So this is crucial. I want you to pay close attention to this. There's 3 main steps to using this, but I promise you if you use it, all of the energy that you give to this negative attention is going to dissipate, and you'll have more energy left over to feed this positive version of reality that you want to create. Let's talk about how that works. Step number 1 to the accept and redirect method. Recall what happened to me during the month of May. I went into a deep pit of despair and my worst fear had come to life. So this means I had fully accepted failure. When we accept something, we can't be in resistance. You can't be in resistance and acceptance at the same time. Acceptance is the antidote to resistance. Please understand this. This is like the ancient art of aikido. The sole method is to take the momentum of the attacker and use it against him. We're not mustering up any sort of energy. The only energy that's being exerted is in redirecting. I'm getting out of the way. Your goals literally want to be manifested. You're just in the way. You just need to get out of the way for it to come into existence. This is how you do that. This is the ancient art of aikido in the mental form. We begin with full acceptance of current situation. Whatever issues are going on in your life right now, whatever you feel stuck with, whatever your worst nightmare is, imagine that it happens. You get fully on board with it happening and you imagine and you see how life still goes on despite it happening. You are no longer worried by your worst nightmare. you're no longer haunted. This is absolutely critical because most people are like, oh, if I accept the worst case scenario, won't it manifest in my life? No, it won't. Quite the contrary. If you accept the worst case scenario, you're no longer giving it the energy of your resistance. If that's the case, you're no longer feeding it. But if you keep resisting it, you keep feeding it, it's more likely to happen in your life because you keep feeding it. But if you simply accept it and you get out of the way, this is where neutral attention gets used. Acceptance is neutral attention. In order to make a change in any area of our lives, it has to begin with acceptance. Full, utter, complete acceptance of this current moment. We cannot change the current moment. No matter how hard you try, you cannot change right now because the present is continually becoming past. By the time you catch it, it's already become past. There is no way to change this present moment. What you can do, what is in your power, is to choose what you would like instead in that next moment. This is where it gets interesting. Step number 2. After you accept this current moment and all of the problems, and you follow that track of thinking to what the worst case scenario would be. Hey, I'm making 2K a month. What if the next month I just made absolute zero? That's my worst fear. That's the worst version of this current setback. So think about what the worst version of the current setback is. If it could get worse, what's the worst that could possibly happen? You'll probably always arrive at death. But that's probably the most unlikely thing to happen because we try to trick ourselves into believing if my business dies, I die. We become attached, we become identified with the things that we do. Get to the worst case scenario and get into complete acceptance of it. That way you drop all importance. Step number 2 is perceive how this unfortunate or this mishap could potentially be a blessing in disguise. Any event that happens is a neutral event. We give it positive, negative, or neutral energy by the nature of our attention. Instead of looking at it as, oh shit, this is bad, we look at it as, hey, how could this potentially be an advantage? How could this potentially be good? Right now in our lives, my wife and I were going through a real tough time with real estate. So we signed a contract and we're about to close and all of a sudden the seller's not responding and the seller's agent isn't responding. We assume they got a higher offer and they want to back out, but we don't want to take it to litigation, take it to court because that's again 3 more months and that's just causing more problems. We could just cut our losses and back out. That's what's happening right now. You know, I look at it as this event that happened. We invested so much time and so much energy. My wife was so excited to get the house. How could this be a blessing in disguise? Maybe if we got into the house, something bad would have happened. Maybe there's something bad about the area that God, the universe, is preventing us from experiencing. Maybe there's a better house for us. Maybe there's a reason this happened. Have you ever considered that? Like any event that happens in your life, maybe this is happening for a reason. If you didn't miss that bus could have crashed or something bad would have happened and the universe is trying to protect you from it. How do you know it all? This is easier to do, by the way, once you've already gotten to a state of acceptance. If you're in that state where the wound is fresh and something bad literally just happened, don't expect yourself to look for blessings in disguise. Just get to a point of accepting, okay, and getting to terms that this really just happened. And once you get to a more neutral point, then you can start to look at how could this potentially be positive. And then the final step is continually redirecting our attention to what is wanted instead. If I could be in a place of full equanimity and full acceptance, now I have my attention freed up to fully choose what's wanted instead. Oh, this house isn't working out. What do we want? We want a house that is X, Y, and Z and has all of the qualities that we're looking for. Once you get really, really good at doing this, you become unstoppable. Nothing can stop you. This whole process determines which life path that you follow, which quantum event manifests, which quantum event you experience in your life. And this all has to do with your attention. There is a great reason why so many cultures, so many ancient religions even, they talk about attention. They talk about attending to something. They talk about giving something your attention or observing it, being in an observation mode. In here, we're combining both this non-polar attention and then we're getting to polar. With non-polar attention, we get into acceptance mode. This is neither good nor bad. I'm just accepting that this fully happened. Then we start to go into a little bit of positives. How could this be a blessing in disguise? And then we build up to full-blown positive when we're in a state of equanimity. What most people do is they're in a resistance mode and they say, oh, you know, let's look for the good in this. Or they say affirmations in the mirror when they feel shit about themselves. If you feel shit about yourself today, allow yourself, accept that you're feeling like crap. And once you're in a place of equanimity, then you can focus on what's wanted instead. But if you try to huff and puff your chest and try to suppress or hide or repress what you're feeling, it is going to haunt you back in the future at some time. Then that affirmation, that thing that you're doing, becomes a form of resistance. You're resisting feeling something by saying the affirmation. That's what's happening. So, this 3-step method, continually applied, has the power to completely change your life. I want you to take a moment to reflect on why your life looks like this and it doesn't look a certain other way. So please take a look at your life right now and all of the events that have happened and the current reality that you're essentially experiencing. Is this what you chose? If not, why not? What do you think is influencing that? What do you think is keeping you or has influenced this current reality and not the ideal reality that you would like to experience? What is that factor that allows you to shift, that allows someone who is experiencing something that they don't like, a reality that they don't like, and go from that to experiencing a reality that they do like? To understand that, we have to understand the concept of a quantum flow, the quantum flow that's around us, and how to navigate through it. If we want to stream the sector of reality of our choosing, we need to understand how we can navigate through this quantum flow. So essentially, there are 3 main ways to navigate through this quantum flow. And this is largely influenced by the predominant thoughts that we have in our minds and the feelings that we feel in our heart. So anything that you're fearful of keeps you stuck in that fear state, and you think fearful thoughts. Oh, I have bills that I don't like. Oh, the economy is collapsing. Oh, all of these bad things are happening. This then makes you think fearful thoughts and feel fearful feelings. When our heart and our minds come together, we make a shift in this quantum flow. We actually make a disturbance in the quantum field. So, if you can imagine this quantum field that's around us, it's always perfectly in balance. Mother Nature likes to keep everything in perfect harmony with 0 disturbance. What we as human beings do with our thoughts and feelings is, in this homogeneous field, we create a disturbance. It gets all bunched up over here, let's say, if you're attributing too much meaning, or you're thinking too much, or you're doubting something too much. And this, by the virtue of our thought and feeling, the intensity of the thought and feeling, we create a disturbance. So now Mother Nature has to come in and balance out this disturbance. How does it do that? Through taking the path of least resistance. So more often than not, the very thing that we fear is actually the thing that we get. Okay? If you fear bills, if you fear problems, then those problems come to you. It's life's cruel way of teaching you the lesson and getting you out of this state of fear. Because Mother Nature knows that if you are very, very fearful of something, if you experience the very thing that you fear, your fear will be gone. Have you ever seen this? Like the very thing that you had a fear of, when it happens, you're like, oh, that was it? It was much worse in my mind. It's already happened, it's done. So more often than not, Mother Nature's way of balancing out this imbalance in the quantum field is by giving you the very thing that you're afraid of. So now we have to understand how to prevent that from happening by ourselves learning how to navigate through the quantum flow and keeping ourselves in harmony. So as I mentioned to you, there's 3 main ways to do it. The first and most common way that human beings go about it is through the victim mindset. It's when we go with the flow. And when I say going with the flow, I don't mean you just simply, you're in balance and you're going with the flow. You go with the flow because you feel like a victim. You're being taken by the flow. You're being washed by the flow. Okay? You have no control over it. You're indignant. You're basically blaming your external circumstances. Oh, I can't do anything about it. Oh, I was placed in this circumstance. Oh, there's nothing I can do to change it. And by staying in this victim mindset, by blaming your external circumstances, the flow washes you. You get washed by the flow and wherever it's going. If you're enjoying the life that you live right now, then going with the flow is perfectly fine, right? Because you're living the life that you want. Why would you not go with the flow? But more often than not, people aren't living the lives that they want, and they're going with the flow because they don't know how to influence the flow in their favor. So this is way number 1, method number 1. Method number 2 is largely very common. It's when you get into personal development and you learn about taking massive action. and you start to go against the flow. Think about all the Grant Cardones and all these influencers who go out there and they're like, take massive action, fight every day, battle every day. This is when you're living a constant battle. Now, this method, I believe, has a little more powerful than the passivity of going with the flow because it's more active, there's more energy. Now you're doing something about it, which is phenomenal. So for someone who is in this passive state of apathy, getting a little more energy and being in anger, being in you're still, by the way, blaming your external circumstances. You're like, life gave me this, I'm going to fight. But you still start to exert a little too much energy. Okay, you start to fight against an invisible force. Every single day feels like a struggle. It feels like you have to battle, and by the end of the day, you almost have no energy left and you're drained, right? Because you have a chip on your shoulder. So this method is still not the most effective way, but this is also another way in which people deal with the flow and trying to influence the flow in their favor. Now, the last and the most effective way that I believe of navigating the quantum field is actually redirecting the flow. This is the way of the reality creator. I'm going to explain what this means in a second. So in life, there are things that you like and things you don't like. When things happen that we don't necessarily like, instead of expressing our dissatisfaction with it, we can simply accept it and move on and do something about it and change it. So sometimes you go with the flow, sometimes you fight against the flow. So it's kind of like having a sailboat, and the winds, you have no control over where the winds are. But what you do have control over is how you set your sails so you can go to the direction that you want to go. You're using the power, you're harnessing the power of the wind, and you're redirecting it to the direction you want to go. This is how you redirect the flow of life. Once you learn how to redirect the flow of life, you're essentially using the quantum field to deliver you to your target destination. Does that make sense? If you can learn to do that in every single aspect of your life, I can promise you within a few short years, you're going to have a life beyond your wildest dreams. And the best way to redirect flow is through a method I like to call accept and redirect. Let's jump right into the accept and redirect method. And I'm going to give you some examples of how you can begin to use it and see results happen right before your very eyes. So now let's talk about one of the most powerful ways to redirect the flow of reality, which is the accept and redirect method. So to begin with, I want to give you an example from where I got this. There's a martial art called aikido, and it's Japanese, I believe, and it roughly translates to unification of energy. And how this martial arts is conducted, every time your opponent strikes a blow, instead of dodging or defending the blow, the other person who is well versed in aikido, they will absorb the energy and the momentum of the blow and redirect it to that person. So when they punch you, you're kind of almost deflecting it and using it against them. So this is the accept and redirect method. In this instance, the efficiency of energy changing form is 100%, right? So no energy is being lost, no energy is being wasted, no energy is needing to be manipulated or created by you. All you're doing is simply taking the energy that already exists and directly changing its form. So this is one of the most efficient ways, one of the least effort and the best ways for you to create your reality and navigate through the quantum flow. Do you understand this? Like, you're no longer fighting against it and you're kind of almost going with the flow, but you're putting up your sails so you kind of go in the direction that you want. It's almost like going with the flow, but in the direction that you want. You're using the power of the flow to take you where you want to go. Another instance that really helped me understand this was, I believe this was Tony Robbins. He was talking about this. He told a story about a drunken father who had two sons, and one of the sons grew up to be just like his father, and the other son grew up to be a CEO. An interviewer, a few years later, I believe, went to the drunken son who turned out just like his father and asked him, "How come you turned out this way?" His answer was, "Well, my father was like that. There's no other way I could have turned out." The interviewer went to the CEO's son and asked, "Well, how come you turned out this way?" And his answer was the same. "Well, my father was like that. I had to turn out this way." So you see how it's the same event happening in the two sons' lives, but they turned out two different ways, even though their answer was the same. The way they perceived it and put meaning on it was completely different. One of them became passive and they were like, "Oh, well, I can't do anything about it. This is the lot that I've been dealt in my life." But the other son did something about it. He was able to redirect the flow and said, hey, I need to do something about this. I can use this to make me better. So with every event that happens in your life, you have no choice in how the event happens in the moment that it happens. Because understand that this present moment is continually becoming past. All we have access to is the target. You only have access to that next moment, not the past moment. So in this moment, your perception towards that event, or your perception in general, your attitude in general, is what will influence the next moment that comes. Please understand this. This is one of the most crucial things that I've had to understand in my journey. In order to shift to that lifeline where you have what you want, what do you need? Your thought energy needs to match the right frequency. You need to stream the correct reality. What is your thought energy? What does it consist of? The feelings that you feel, the thoughts that you think. So in order to change this energy, your attitude has to be 100% in line with what you want. So to give you an example of this, let's say you want to make 20K a month. And 1 month, you're getting really close to it, but then something breaks in your business. And this was the first month that you've gotten the closest to it. Something breaks, a client requests a refund, or a business system breaks, your ad system shut down, anything could happen, or you get a massive bill and you can't make that 20K profit. What is your attitude at the instant that that event happens? Is this a setback? Are you like, oh shit, I've been dealt another bad card, I was so close, but I just didn't make it? Or is your attitude that of, you know what, this happened, but this doesn't mean I won't make it. Somehow this is benefiting me. Which approach closely resembles the accept and redirect method? If you guess the second one, you're correct. So understand how that resembles the accept and redirect method. When the event happens that we don't like, it doesn't match what we were expecting, but we completely accept it. This too has happened. I cannot change this current event. What I can do is what happens in the next moment. I learned this lesson from golf. Tiger Woods said, it doesn't matter what happened in this shot, it's always about the next shot. In golf, it's always about the next shot. So you always have to think about that next moment. What attitude am I perceiving this with? What meaning am I putting onto this? Because whatever attitude and whatever meaning you put onto this event will shape the future events to come. For most people, when they have an obstacle, and this is why they stay stuck, they look at it, they perceive it negatively. Their thought energy attunes to that negative lifeline, and they keep staying stuck in the same loop over and over again because they're asleep, they've fallen asleep, they've become a puppet to the flow, they're being washed by the flow. Instead of taking a step back, regaining conscious awareness, and then choosing. This is what you have to learn to do. Learn to center yourself and see and observe life as it's happening. You're not the experiencer, you're the observer. You can choose when to experience and you can choose when to withdraw. This is what you have to learn to do, to take a step back and watch the play as it unfolds. Don't be the actor or actress, be the watcher. And this is how you use the accept and redirect method. It is always about the meaning that we put onto it. And a great book that I would recommend you read is Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. It's a story about a guy who was in a Nazi prison camp. He's Jewish, and how he maintained a positive attitude throughout it, and how it eventually, helped him get through it. And one of the greatest quotes that I've ever heard was, everything can be taken from a man, I'm paraphrasing, except his attitude, right? So everything can be taken from you except your attitude. That is the one thing that is in your control at all times. And surprisingly, it is what influences future events that unfold in your life. To fully make use of this, we have to learn how to get into 100% resonance with that final goal. Because if you can energetically and frequency-wise get into vibrationally, get into 100% resonance with that end goal that you have and stay with it. The problem is we can't stay with it. If you can stay with it at all times, no matter what, then you'll move the fastest path towards that goal. And in order to do that, we have to understand one more thing. And this is called the energetic resonance method. So the final and the most powerful way to experience that ideal reality, the ideal simulation, and stream it into existence right now is to get into 100% energetic resonance with that final goal that you have. And towards the end of this, I'm going to give you a use case, how you can begin to use it right now. So let's get started. So the biggest problem, the biggest thing that keeps you away from that ideal reality that you would like to experience is something that I've heard a lot of our clients describe recently, FUD. Now I had to look up what this meant, and I found out it stands for fear, uncertainty, doubt. I think, you could correct me if I'm wrong. But fear, uncertainty, and doubt are of the same emotional resonance. Okay, they're of the same level, and it's the level of fear. So fear, uncertainty, and doubt keep us stuck in the current cycle that we've been in. The reason why you can't experience the reality that you would like to experience is because you feel the predominant feelings of fear, uncertainty, and doubt. How do you eliminate fear, uncertainty, and doubt? It's very, very simple. Experience gratitude instead. I want you to take a moment to reflect on this. When I feel grateful, can I experience fear? It's impossible. When I'm grateful, can I experience uncertainty? It's impossible. When I'm grateful, can I experience doubt? Impossible. We waste so much time experiencing fear, experiencing uncertainty, and experiencing doubt. It doesn't serve you. Because deep down, there's a part of us, the ego, if you'd like to call it, it believes that if you experience fear, it's good for me. Fear is keeping me alive. Uncertainty is keeping me alive. Doubt is making me question myself and my decisions. It's keeping me alive. Quite the contrary. It's something that we've made ourselves believe. There is a feeling of analyzing and verifying and checking, but doubt, that the persistent one that you keep experiencing again and again, even though you don't need to, that is useless. Okay? So much time in the spiritual journey, in this creation journey, we experience doubt. It keeps us from fully doubling down and making the mistakes we need to make in order to learn. How many times before you've launched a big project, or you've maybe turned in a big project, have you experienced doubt? Was it helpful? Did it help you? I bet it didn't. Because if you just go ahead and fail, you fail with flying colors, you will at least learn a lesson that will help you at that next phase of your life. So with experiencing doubt, you're preventing yourself from failing. Every single wealthy person I know has lost money. Every single poor person I know has never lost money because they've lived safe and they have never put themselves out there. If only you can put yourself out there and you fail, you can be successful. You can never succeed without first failing. Like, this was a big, big game changer for me, right? All the people who stay stuck is because they're stuck in a comfort zone. They never do anything to put themselves out of their comfort zones. They never, take a risk. They never invest their money. If you have taken all these risks and you have failed, kudos to you because you've tried, right? Because you're trying. Trying doesn't mean failing. Failing is when you don't try at all and you stay stuck in the same situation again and again. So it's fear, uncertainty, and doubt that keeps us stuck. Gratitude is the way out. So let's understand what fear means. Where does fear, uncertainty, and doubt stem from? What does this really mean? Fear literally stems from the focus on have not. Okay, when I'm focusing on what I do not have, I'm fearful. When I'm focusing on what I do not have, something that's unknown, I'm fearful, I'm doubtful, I'm uncertain. When I focus on what I do have, glass half full, I'm grateful. When I focus on what already is, I'm grateful. The biggest problem we see with people who don't have clarity on their lives, they're uncertain, they don't know what to do, is because they're focusing on what they don't know. When you start to focus on what you do know at this moment and just act on it with the trust and the faith that the unknown will present itself to you when the time is right, that's exactly what happens. When you stay stuck in that feeling state of fear, uncertainty, and doubt, you keep creating an invisible wall in your life, okay? This invisible wall is the reason why you're stuck. It's like the chicken and egg situation. You think you'll get clear and your problem will be solved once you get clear. But in order to get clear, you need to get rid of unclarity or fear, uncertainty, and doubt, right? So you need to make the internal shift first in order to see some external change. There's so many people I see, like sometimes I post in the community and they're like, oh, but what do you do if you're poor right now? We talk about how to have a wealth mindset, but what do you do if you're poor right now? How can you feel rich? Try your best. Look at what the little things that you do have, not what you don't have. It's very subjective. You only think you're poor because you're fucking comparing yourself to other people on Instagram and Facebook and all these other places. You're like, oh, that's rich. I'm poor. I don't have. Well, you have a lot more than a lot of people in a lot of different places. If you're watching this video right now, you have a lot more than a lot of people in a lot of different places. I can tell you that for sure. And once you keep doubling down on that, that keeps growing. When you keep doubling down on your fear, uncertainty, and doubt, then your fear, uncertainty, and doubt keep growing. When you keep doubling down on what you're grateful for, then what you're grateful for keeps growing. To give you a real concrete example of this, we had one of our clients, Jay, I'm gonna mask his identity for this sake, and he was struggling with compulsive masturbation, compulsive habits, smoking and drugs basically, and he was struggling with all of these things. And every time, and this was like 6-7 months for a year, he would come on the calls and ask me like, what's going on? I keep relapsing, I keep going back into my old habits, I've been in this process for a while. And what I started to realize was he was extremely hard on himself. He was only focusing on what he didn't have and what he didn't accomplish and all the goals that he failed to do. I simply advised him, dude, you just need to start loving yourself. You don't love yourself enough. You don't appreciate the nice things you've done. Imagine having a kid or a friend and you just constantly keep picking at them for not being good enough, for not doing the right thing. Their self-image is going to crumble. They're not going to believe in themselves. Would you ever treat someone close to you like that? Why do you treat yourself like that? Why? It just doesn't make sense because we think if we're hard on ourselves, we'll grow. It's complete bullshit. Be nice to yourself. Be kind to yourself. View yourself as a human being. Once you start doing that, your life begins to change. So I simply advise them, just become a little bit more loving towards yourself. Appreciate the things that you've done, the little things that you've done, all the good that you've accomplished already in your life. And ignore all the bad things that happen. Every time you relapse, just move on. We're all human, happens to all of us. We make mistakes. And as he started to do that, it literally took around 3 weeks, like 20 days. He came on a call, he said, my life completely changed. Ever since I started doing that. I haven't relapsed ever since. So this is one of the most powerful ways with which you can begin to change your life. Just feeling grateful for all the things that you have right now. And that is how you get into 100% emotional resonance with the goal. Let's now look at a use case in which you can begin to use this. Going back to that example of making 20K a month. I love this 20K a month goal because this is something that I struggled with when I first started in this journey around 4 years ago. And I wanted financial freedom, I wanted to quit my job, and I thought getting 20K a month would give me everything that I wanted and more. I really struggled getting to this. It took me a while to get to this and there were a lot of obstacles in my way. So let's say you want to achieve a certain revenue goal, a certain monetary goal in your business or maybe your career, right? The same example applies. Your goal is 20K a month. Let's talk about the energy that is behind that goal. What would you feel if you had 20K a month? For me, it was that abundance of wealth. The feeling, the energy behind it, the energetic feeling is abundance of wealth. Because the heart doesn't understand 20K a month. The goal is for the mind. The number is for the mind. The feeling is this feeling of an abundance of wealth. When I feel an abundance of wealth, it is different from what you feel to be an abundance of wealth. Every single feeling has a different quality. Even though it has a similar flavor, it has a very distinctly different quality. Everyone feels everything differently, okay? And every single feeling differs in energy from another feeling. So you know what this abundance of wealth feels like to you. So now, let's say, you try to go for that 20K a month goal and you want to get into complete energetic resonance with that goal. How do you do that when you don't have it? That's the real question. Well, look at everything that you do have in your life right now. What are a couple of things that you can identify in your life right now that corresponds to this energy of abundance of wealth? The key is to experience this energy right now in this moment, not in the next moment, right now. How can you experience this right now? Oh, I'm living in a house. This house is nice. There are nice features to this house. I could easily not be living in a house. I could easily not have a roof over my head. I could easily not have food. The very fact that I have all of these things. Look, I can afford books to enrich my intellect. The fact that I can afford that now, I'm already experiencing this abundance right now. I'm grateful for all of the things that I have right now. So what is something that can correspond to this abundance of wealth in this very moment? Identify 3 things right now. What I want you to do right now is pause this video and look at that abundance of wealth, if that is something you're after. Identify your goal that you want to experience within the next 12 months. Identify the energy behind it. And identify 3 things that you have right now that you can be grateful for. 3 things, and you can do this, that closely resemble that. So if you're struggling with a relationship goal, your partner and you have a strained relationship. Well, where in the past did you have a good relationship? How could it be worse, right? How could life be worse than what it already is? When you look at that, it's very easy to be grateful. things could be a lot worse than what it is right now. I can promise you that. As human beings, we only look at like 99% of our lives are going the way that we want. We're only focused on that 1% that isn't going the way that we want. That is causing all of our suffering. Okay? Once you start to focus on this, once you start to experience great gratitude for what you have right now, you immediately shift to that lifeline where the goal that you have exists and you start to move towards it, right? Because now you're in energetic resonance with it. Remember initially in the video, I was talking about how you need to understand that there's multiple versions of yourself in every single reality. The crucial point, and this is one of the ways to do it, is to shift into that identity of that self you would be when you're effortlessly experiencing that goal. Okay? Who would you be if you're effortlessly experiencing that goal? Because when we assume that being right now in this moment, then the actions that we need to take to get there, the doing, follows. And when the doing happens, the having also happens as a result. And just like that, you bring that reality that seems so far away from this current state and you experience it right now in this moment. Slowly but surely, you experience that. So the best way to do that is through a method I like to call identity shifting, through shifting your identity. I made a 46-minute, one of the most comprehensive videos, if not the most comprehensive video on identity shifting on YouTube. You can just click on this link right now. It's completely free for you to access. I want you to benefit from this. Watch it right now, click on this and access that identity shifting video. It's the fastest way for you to shift into your ideal self, and I'll see you in the next video right now. Thanks.